Start them up, sit them down. This is the time that you need to pay attention. So listen up. I'm Lauren Shehadi alongside fantasy football writer Jamey Eisenberg, brought to you by Norton because every click matters. We are starting with your start of the week. You know, I saw on our message board that said Tony Romo or Donovan McNabb. You say McNabb all the way.
McNabb, as you would say, is money.
Money.
I like McNabb a lot this week. You know, you're talking about a Dallas defense that's done a great job in pressuring the quarterback, which is the one area of concern when you look at McNabb. But the secondary is still not the greatest situation for the Cowboys. They've allowed at least 2 passing touchdowns in each of their last 4 games. Matt Hasselbeck coming off a decent game against the Cowboys with over 200 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. I think you'll see McNabb be around 225, 240 passing yards, have the chance for a couple of touchdowns. You saw what he did last week against the Giants, which also brings a lot of pressure. Lauren, you know, I love the way that Deshaun Jackson, Brent Selleck, Jeremy Maclin, all of his weapons are playing. And let's not forget, he's expected to get Brian Westbrook back this week. That'll not only help in pass protection, that'll help as another receiver out of the backfield. Love McNabb. I think he's going to be a great start this week.
You love McNabb. I'm not loving this next graphic. Goodness gracious. Matt Ryan is my starting quarterback. I have Carson Palmer on the bench. What do I do?
You go with Carson Palmer.
Wow.
By the way, props to you for winning your fantasy game last week. I believe you snapped a 5-game losing streak. Look at you.
That's right.
Matt Ryan is someone you should avoid this week. If you look at the turnovers that he's had each of the last 4 games, it's just unbelievable that he's turned into such a turnover-prone quarterback. He had only 11 interceptions last year. He's got 9 already so far, with 8 of them coming in the last 3 weeks. You throw a fumble in there as well. He's just not getting the job done in terms of giving you the quality production that you expect from Matt Ryan. I love the way he's going to play as the season goes on, but just sit him this week. Washington, surprisingly enough, is number 2 in pass defense. They've done a great job against opposing quarterbacks. Now, I know you're going to look at the schedule and say they've played some real cupcake opponents like Kansas City, like Detroit, like St. Louis. But if you also look at what they did against Eli Manning and Donovan McNabb, really limited them in their production. So keep an eye on Matt Ryan, not only with him, but Roddy White and his left tackle is also dealing with injuries. So that's a key when you're talking about Ryan and what he has in store. On top of the fact, he's taken 7 sacks in his last 2 games. That's unbelievable for him because he does really a good job at avoiding pressure.
I was going to say, I would think the Redskins matchup would be good, but the Redskins, like you said, do have surprisingly good defense.
D'Angelo Hall actually going back to Atlanta for the first time, too.
All right, Matt Hasselbeck is our next quarterback. We're talking about a little bit roughed up. But Jamey says not to worry against Detroit, one of the worst passing defenses in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, sometimes there are just matchups where you just can't avoid the obvious, and Hasselbeck is the obvious guy here that you have to start because of the matchup against the Lions. I just think the way that he's going to play, coming off that good game against Dallas, he's at home. His better games have been at home outside of the one game against Arizona where, as you know, we called him the start of the week that week. But, hey, some things happen in a bad way. This is going to be a good thing for him. I think you'll see Hasselbeck come out and play well. I just like the way that he's going to face this Lions team, which really has no pass rush, which should allow that weak offensive line some time to allow Hasselbeck to look downfield. Love Hushmanzada, love Burleson. And I also like John Carlson, which is a surprise. He's really struggled at tight end, but I think he should play well in this game.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, Matt Schaub, new territory for him, Jamey, without Owen Daniels. The first time in Houston without Owen Daniels. What do you think the outcome will be?
Yeah, it's
Doom and gloom, huh?
Also a tough matchup. You know, you see some pretty big-name quarterbacks here. Jay Cutler's got a tough matchup against Arizona, and Eli Manning's just been struggling. But Schaub is a guy that most people will find it hard to bench. I have to make that decision in a couple of my leagues. Can I actually sit Matt Schaub down, who's been the number 2 fantasy quarterback in standard scoring leagues behind Aaron Rodgers? I just look at the matchup where Indianapolis has only allowed 3 passing touchdowns on the season, and as Lauren said, no Owen Daniels in there. So that's going to be a big key for him. Now maybe we'll see Kevin Walter step up and resume that number 2 role, which he held and did a very good job in last year. And as we know, Andre Johnson's there. But the Colts just do a good job in forcing pressure, forcing turnovers. The thing about Indianapolis is they make teams one-dimensional, and then when they know that you're going to throw, they just sit back there and pick you off. And I think that's what's going to happen to Schaub. 2 interceptions last week against Buffalo. No surprise against a good secondary. Once Owen Daniels went out, he really struggled. So I think if you can sit him, you know, this is one of those things like you say, Matt Ryan, Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer's a good number 2 guy to stick in there. I have Joe Flacco. That's a guy I'm probably going to end up starting instead of Schaub this week.
All right. You know, I was watching the Monday night game, and I needed 18 points, and I wish I had Pierre Thomas. Jamey, do you wish you're going to have him again this week?
You know, I think you're going to get similar type production. You know, the interesting thing is going to be how these guys split carries. That's been the case with the 3 backs in New Orleans with Reggie Bush and Mike Bell. I just think Mike Bell had a crucial fumble there at the end of the game. Pierre Thomas showed he can be a do-it-all type running back for them, and I think you should see him play well in this game. Carolina, the run defense has gotten better. If you listen to Dave Richard on our podcast, on any of the things that we've debated over the course of the last couple of weeks, he's really pounding the drum that Carolina's run defense is starting to improve. And they probably have, but you still got to look at they've allowed a touchdown to an opposing running back every game this season. So whether it's Pierre Thomas, whether it's Mike Bell, whether it's Reggie Bush, I think it's going to be Thomas. Like you said, Monday night he looked great in that game, and I think that continues in a home game against the Panthers.
Jamey, let's give fantasy owners an update on Marion Barber. That thumb is going to be okay. He practiced in full on Wednesday, right? But will it still give him a little bit of trouble?
You know, I don't know if it's just the thumb, if it's still the quad injury. You know, those are two really key points with him. I'm glad you brought up the thumb problem. If you look at, though, at just his number of carries over the last really 4 or 5 weeks, only getting about 14 carries per game. He's only been above 15 carries once this season. That was week 2 against the Giants, and that's when he hurt his quad. He has 3 games where he's just struggled, not getting you huge production, not getting you the fantasy points that you're looking for. So I think if you can afford to sit Marion Barber, that's probably the way to go. The interesting thing about the Eagles is they've only allowed 1 rushing touchdown in their last 5 games. So they're doing a really good job. Last week against the Giants, Ahmad Bradshaw scored a touchdown. I just think Barber, the way that the Cowboys are playing, they're throwing the ball all over the place. You're looking at Felix Jones become a factor, even more so, I think, than a lot of people were expecting. He's catching the ball in the backfield as opposed to Barber, and probably the thumb injury is the reason why. Only 6 catches on the season. That's such a big part of his game, and it's missing right now.
And that's going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch that one. You guys can't probably wait to watch Michael Crabtree, his home debut. Is he going to get in the end zone, Jamey?
I hope so. You know, it's been nice to see him play at the level that he has his first 2 games, which has been a big surprise because you expected with the holdout that he wouldn't play at a very high level, but now he's got a dream matchup. First home game against a Titans defense that's allowed 19 touchdowns on the season. They're the worst pass defense in the NFL. So we'll see if Crabtree can take advantage of that. As you saw, we have Alex Smith on this list. Like him a lot. Love Vernon Davis, who's really emerging now as a #1 tight end, maybe even the best tight end in the NFL with the way he's finding the end zone. 7 touchdowns on the season. So Crabtree and Davis are great starts. Smith as well. I think you'll see Crabtree come out and play well. You know, it's interesting. People are debating, you know, guys like Donald Driver for someone like Michael Crabtree, you know, the experience and the guy playing well in a good matchup as opposed to a rookie. I just think Crabtree, this is the time to use him and see if he can finally find the end zone. Had 80 yards receiving last week, but did lose a fumble, but I think he's only going to continue to get better.
And I think Santonio Holmes needs to get a little bit better. Fantasy owners are saying a lot better. What a nightmare so far, Jamey. He needs to go the other direction.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Talking about Dave Richard and someone that he likes is Mike Wallace, the nice rookie wide receiver there for the Steelers, who's taken a lot of production away from Santonio Holmes. You know, if you look at this matchup, it's going to depend on where Champ Bailey lines up. I think you'll see Champ Bailey matched up with Santonio Holmes quite a bit, spend some time on Hines Ward, depending on how they line up. You got to just keep an eye on Holmes, and the safe option is to probably bench him just because he hasn't been getting the job done. Like Ben Roethlisberger this week, I think Rashard Mendenhall should make some plays, but Holmes is the one I think you got to be careful of. I think you'll just see, again, that secondary for Denver is very good. They held Randy Moss, that's his name. They held Randy Moss to a limited production in their matchup with the Patriots a couple weeks ago, did a good job. Last week they gave up a touchdown to Derek Mason, but only 10 fantasy points. So Randy Moss is somebody I think that struggled in that game. That's a good indication of how Holmes can do. I would sit Holmes if you can afford to.
Carson Palmer over Matt Ryan. I'm going to go change it right now.
You should.
All right, thanks, Jamey. Thank you for watching Fantasy Football Today every Sunday, 11 o'clock for 2 hours. For Jamey Eisenberg, I'm Lauren Shehadi. We'll talk to you soon.